Now, having discussed some of the important financial institutions in our economy and the macroeconomic role of these institutions, now we are ready to build a model for financial markets. Here, our purpose in building this model is to explain how financial markets coordinate the economy's saving and investment. The model also gives us a tool with which we can analyze various government policies that can influence the equilibrium interest rate, saving and investment. So to keep things simple, we assume that the economy has only one financial market called market for loanable funds. This is a bit complicated model, but it's very easy if you can apply the demand and supply model of chapter 4 to markets for loanable funds. So in this model, all savers go to this market. There is one market for loanable funds, and all savers go to this market to deposit their saving, and all borrowers to this market to take out their loans. Thus, here the term loanable funds refers to all income that people have chosen to save and lend out rather than use for their consumption. Okay? And to the amount that investors have chosen to borrow to fund new investment projects. So the loanable funds is the amount that is left over after you make all your spending. So there is amount of income that people have chosen to save and lend out rather than use their consumption. And the investors, from investors' perspective, this is the amount have chosen to borrow to fund new investment projects. In the market for loanable funds, there is one interest rate, which is both return to saving and the cost of borrowing, which is not totally reflecting the real life. As we said, we are making an assumption there is only one market, and in this market, people, if they need money, they need to borrow, they go to that market, and if people want to save their money, they go to that market. And loanable funds refers to the amount that savers have income that is left over after consumption for lending out, and it is the same time this amount income that investors have chosen to borrow to fund new investment projects. So the assumption of a single financial market, of course, is not literally true. As we have seen, the economy has many types of financial institutions, but we are trying to simplify the model so we can explain it. For our purposes here, we can ignore the diversity of financial institutions and assume that the economy has a single financial market. Okay? So, why we need this model? Because it helps us understand how the financial system coordinates saving and investment. And the second thing, we will look at the policies, how government policies and other factors affect saving, investment, and interest rate. And let's look at the assumptions again. Only one financial market. All savers deposit their saving in this market, and all borrowers take out loans from this market. There is one interest rate, which is both return to saving and cost of borrowing. Let's start with the supply side of loanable funds. Supply side of loanable funds comes from people who have some extra income they want to save and lend out. This lending can occur directly, such as when a household buys a bond from a firm, or it can occur indirectly, such as when a household makes a deposit in a bank, which in turn uses the funds to make loans. So in both cases, saving, this is important here, saving is the source of supply of loanable funds. Okay? And let's look at here. When we say saving, remember that we have two saving. One is households, private saving with extra income, loan it out and earn interest. And the second one, don't forget public saving. If positive, if there is a surplus, government surplus, adds to national saving and the supply of loanable funds. And if negative, that means government has a deficit, it reduces from national saving and the supply of loanable funds. Here is how we can draw the graph of supply of loanable funds. As you see, the quantity, as like supply and demand graph in chapter 4, the quantity of the loanable funds is on the horizontal axis, and on the vertical axis you will see the interest rate. Why interest rate? Because interest rate is the price of a loan. Like in a milk market, you remember the price of the milk on the horizontal axis, but here is the loan. The price of the loan is the interest rate, so always the prices goes on the vertical axis in an economic graph, so the interest rate is on the vertical axis. And this interest rate represents the return, the amount of return or the opportunity cost of saving money. Okay, that's why it is the price. So think of that. if there is a high interest rate, the interest rate increase from 3 to 6%, it makes saving more attractive because now there is higher return for each dollar you save. The quantity of loanable funds supplied, that means savers are go to the bank or buy bonds or stocks more because the return is increasing, and the funds supplied loanable funds supplied rises as the interest rate. So as you see, supply curve is like demand and supply for goods market is a positively sloped line, and it increases, the quantity of loanable funds supplied increases with the increasing interest rate. Okay. And the next part of the market is the demand for loanable funds, and the demand for loanable funds comes from investment. Okay. Demand for loanable funds comes from households and firms who wish to borrow to make investment. This demand includes families taking out mortgages to buy new homes. It also includes firms borrowing to buy new equipment or build factories. In both cases, investment is the source of demand for loanable funds. Look at now the demand. As you see again, the quantity of loanable funds is on the vertical axis and interest is on the horizontal axis, and the interest rate is on the vertical axis. And again, the interest rate is the price of the loan. It represents the amount that borrowers pay for loans and the amount that lenders receive on their saving. Because a high interest rate makes borrowing more expensive, it's the opportunity cost of borrowing money, the quantity of loanable funds demanded falls as the interest rate rises. Okay, so that's the reason the demand curve is negatively sloped. When the interest rate increases, you borrow less loans. Like at 7%, 50 billion loanable funds are demanded from the investor side, but when it's 4%, 80 billion loanable funds are demanded from the investment side. Okay. And one more thing I would like to say here, the interest rate you see here is real interest rate. Remember the difference between real and nominal. Nominal interest rate is the interest rate as usually reported, the monetary return to saving and the monetary cost of borrowing. On the other hand, real interest rate is the nominal interest rate corrected for inflation. It equals the value of money over time. The real interest rate more accurately reflects the real return to saving and the real cost of borrowing. Therefore, the supply and demand for loanable funds depends on the real interest rate, and the equilibrium in this figure should be interpreted as determining the real interest rate in the economy. Okay, so here is when we talk 5%, it is the inflation corrected interest rate, which is the real interest rate. It's equal to the amount that is borrowed from the market. So if there is the interest rate is 4%, 3%, there's going to be a shortage of loanable funds, would encourage lenders to raise the interest rate they charge. A higher interest rate would encourage saving and discourage borrowing for investment. And conversely, if the interest rate were higher than the equilibrium level, the quantity of loanable funds supplied would exceed the quantity of loanable funds demanded. And as lenders competed for the scarce borrowers, interest rate would be driven down. In this way, the interest rate approaches the equilibrium level at which the supply and demand for loanable funds exactly equal to each other.